Hello, my name is Masood. I'm a software developer, and in this video I'm going to talk about JavaScript functions. Along with classes and objects, functions are a core component in understanding JavaScript. So in this video we're going to talk about functions, inner functions, custom objects, and we will start with basic functions to the more complicated ones, and how you can use functions to make your code cleaner and more maintainable with using JavaScript inner functions, making sophisticated functions more clear for you. So let me start. Okay, let's start with a really simple function. I want to write a function to add some values for me, and the name of function will be add. So to write function, I should use the keyword function at the first, and the name of function here, add, and then you should write arguments here, for example a and b, and then here I should write the logics of my function here. For example, I want to return sum of a and b here. Okay, it's our first function, and to call it I should use the name of function here, add, and I should mention here the values of every arguments here, for example 1 for a and 2 for b. And to see the result of our function, we should write console or console.log and put it here. And our function is calling and working great. In JavaScript, we can have default values for our parameters. For example, if I write 2 here and 3 here and don't mention any values here, JavaScript will use 2 and 3 as a value of a and b, and you can see that the result is 5. Also, we can write more parameters. For example, 2, 3, 4, 5. But here JavaScript will ignore these values and just run add with 1 and 2, and the result will be 3. We can also store our functions inside variables, arrays, and other places. For example, I define a variable b and put it inside it, and I can write b here, and you can see that b is working the same as add, and you pass your whole function inside the b, and b and add are the same here. Sometimes we need to have lots of arguments for a function, and writing them here is not a good idea at all. So there is another way that we can pass lots of arguments to our function. We should write it here. We should use argument variable here. Let's see. I need a variable called sum and a for loop. Arguments dot length and plus. Arguments is a variable that contains every parameters that you have written here. So like an array. So I can read arguments using this syntax. Arguments and index of I. And then return the value of sum. So you can see that it's working well, and in this way we can have as many arguments as you need in this way. Okay. Another way that we can do the same is that use three dots and, for example, args, and run a loop through args variable. So I should write it, change it here. Let or value of args, and here sum plus equal to value, and you can see that it's working, and it was another way to have infinite number of variables and arguments. And there is another syntax that we can write or function. We can have it inside a variable. For example, I have a variable add that is contains, and here I don't need the name of function, and you can see it's working. We can also write some JavaScript functions that don't have any name, and they are useful, for example, for when that you want to pass a function inside another function to run as a, for example, callback. So to write this kind of functions, I need to do something like this: function, the keyboard, and here I can have some variables, and then let's have it here. For example, the result of function is a plus b, and to run this function I should do something like this. And you're seeing that our function doesn't have any name, but we are able to run the function using parentheses in front of our function code. For example, I have a function to process some variables. I should write it here, do process, and for example we have a and b, and a routine that it will be a function, another function, and return routine with a and b. So for example, I want to add a and b, so I should write it like this: let add result equal to do process, and for example 1 and 2, and then I should write my function that here is not necessary to have a name for my function, so I write it like this, and I should mention my parameters here, a and b, and return a plus b, and I don't need it. Then console.log the result add result, and you can see that we call a function inside another function, and the result is 3. We can use it several times. For example, divide result and change it to this. Okay. JavaScript functions are somehow objects in this language. So we can have some functions that are really same as classes in other languages like C++ or Java. For example, I can have a function make person and first name, for example, last name, and we can have a return here. First is equal to first and last is equal to last. This syntax is really similar to JSON syntax, and we have a function that returns us an object, a custom object, and we can have some operation on this object. For example, we want to print the first name and last name of a person. So function person full name it accepts a person and return us person dot first plus and then person dot last. Here we want to instantiate a new object like in Java or C++, but in this case we don't have a class, we just have a function that behave like a class for us. So make person, it's like a constructor also. For example, Simon, and we'll see. Let's see what is inside a variable. Console.log egg. As you can see here, we have an object with first and last. So let's call the person full name function, and we should pass our person here and put it here. And you can see that Simon Wilson appears here and our function is running well. This code is working, but it's not a good code and it's a little ugly. So let's make it a better. I wanna put these functions inside my object and call them through my instance. So full name is equal to a function without any name, and this function returns this object dot first plus and a space, and and we can remove it away and call this function in this way, a dot full name. As you can see, this code is really better than before. Okay, let's go for inner functions. Inner functions are so useful in JavaScript because they let us to have a clear and maintainable code for our projects. Sometimes we have several functions that they are somehow related together, and we don't need all of them to be accessible from our global scope. So to teach you how they are useful, I'm gonna make a case to see that these inner functions how much are useful. Here we have an example. We have several mathematical functions here that they are defined inside our global scope, and this way of defining these functions is not a clean and maintainable way. So we want to add these functions inside math function and use them from math, and it's not a good idea to have all these functions inside our global scope. So let's see how we can optimize this code to be more clean and clear. Okay, as you can see, I removed away all of the functions that was inside our global scope, and I added them inside my math function. It's a normal function that have several inner functions inside that, and to use this function I should write something like this. For example, my math is equal to new my math. It's really like when you are instantiating a new object, and then console.log my math, and now we are able to call our inner functions, for example function add, and add these two variables for us, and you can see that it works well. And our code in this way is so clear, and we don't have access to the, for example, add or other functions here. For example, if I do it like it, add is undefined. Okay guys, thank you for watching this episode. If you have any questions in JavaScript functions, I would be really happy to answer all your questions. If you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel to see my new videos. Thank you again. Bye.